Revolution, everybody. This is Brother Leonard, the Truth Seeker, and I'm coming to you with a few minutes of truth. And I'm going to try to keep this just a few minutes. Many of you who follow this page, and many of you over the past couple of days may have been introduced to my page because of the topic that we were talking about today. Okay. First of all, to all those who are new, thank you for coming on, and I'm hoping that you not only watch the video that I reposted that I'm going to talk about in this commentary. Hopefully you guys got a chance to go through the rest of the channel to see what it is that I do and to see what it is that that I've been charged with as a member of the body of Christ to basically hold these particular preachers accountable for the actions that they have perpetrated against the body of Christ. So if you haven't, take some time to go through the rest of the channel to check out some of those videos. And what you'll find is that the beginning of this channel, towards the beginning of this channel, I focus a lot of attention on Brian Carn. A lot of attention on not only the psychic video, but I went through YouTube for about a month and a half, and basically this is what I did. I went through and downloaded a whole lot of Brian Carn videos. See, back from about 2010-ish to 2017, roughly 2016 is when I got started. But right around that time, Brian Carn was all over YouTube. There were literally hundreds of videos of his sermons, of his prophecies, of his interactions with people, his words, his social media. There was a whole lot of it. And I went through and I watched a lot of Brian Carn for close to about a 9-month period. And during the 9-month period, you see in the video in the timeline of when I would go through, find the video, and then basically dissect the video and give my commentary on why, he is a plagiarist. Not only is he a false prophet, and would explain that he's a necromancer, and that he also would trick people. And one of the common tricks that he did was envelope reading, where he made people put their offerings in envelopes, and then he would have people sign and put information on there. And he also not only did envelope reading, but he would also use tactics as, call out a loved one, all that different stuff. And then when he came back to the time where he wanted to prophesy or to somewhat minister to people, he would take the information that he read off of envelopes, that he heard out of people's mouths, and basically direct it as if he heard something from the Lord. I have video proof of all that. But that stuff, like you have to go to the bottom of the, bottom of the page. And then when they say click more for more videos, you got to click that. And then you got to go down to the bottom of the page, and then you got to click that. So, yes, there's a long track record on this channel of the confrontations of, that I posted of Brian Carn. Okay. Now, when I got word of this video of this Facebook Live from Pierre Withlow, it did pique my interest because not only have I been following the things that he does on video, but I've also had been receiving, because of the videos, I have been receiving reports from different women over the past couple of years about relationships that they've had with Brian Carn. Now, with those relationships, with those people, I've just been hearing the information. I really haven't done much with it. I've only followed up on one of the women that on this channel, and because she was willing and ready to not only come forth and name names, but she also went ahead and confronted Brian Carn. She goes, and now you can actually follow her as she started to take up a mantle of confronting and holding preachers accountable with her YouTube presence and Facebook and Instagram. She goes by the handle of Hood Evangelist. Okay, so I have a pretty long track record and a pretty long history of dealing with Brian Carn, his situations, his tactics. Also, prior to this YouTube channel, I did a radio show when we first learned about the problems and of Brian Carn, because at that time he was still big on on the social media, and his presence was really really big. So like I said, I have a very long track record of trying to hold Brian Carn accountable. All right, so with that being said, on Friday morning, when I got a message saying that Pierre Withlow was on his Facebook Live Thursday night, I watched the video, and then before finishing the video, I immediately downloaded it because it seemed like to me that Mr. Withlow was somewhat ready, but really isn't ready for this. Okay, he's not ready for this. Now, in dealing with confronting preachers and dealing with this situation, I'm going to say some things about all three parties that are involved. Okay, I'm going to talk about Brian Carn and his role. I want to talk about Pierre Withlow, and I'm going to mention his wife. Okay, and I think I'm going to start with the wife first. But with all this that's going on, this is the reason why we here in the Church Folk Revolution, this is the reason why we exist. Okay, we exist for not just for mess like this, but this is a mess. This is a total mess. It's a crazy mess. But we are here for this because, we have to be able to look from the outside to shed light on the mess inside, so that when the light gets shown, people can start cleaning stuff up. Okay, so we're looking to start cleaning things up. Now, like I said, this is a mess. It's a big mess. I want to start off by saying that Mr. Withlow, Mrs. Withlow, first of all, I want you guys to know that I am praying for you, and I'm praying that you will rebound from this marriage. I don't know if it hasn't been disclosed to me, and I'm not asking for any disclosure on this as it relates to your relationship, your family. But I'm also praying that if you do have children, that God would cover and protect your children as you're going through this time in your lives, in your relationship. I'm praying that whatever problems that led to the situations that has happened, that God would remove you from those situations, and not only remove you from those situations, but begin to teach you how to love each other again. Okay, not to say that you fell out of love, not to say that you're out of, that you dislike each other or anything like that, But something happened where you, Pierre, may have lost sight of protecting your wife, and Miss Withlow, I don't know your name and I'm not going to try to find it or anything like that, that you may not have felt secure in your relationship. Something may have happened in that way and in this marriage, and I'm praying that God will shore all that up. Okay? See, a lot of times in marriages and in marriage relationships, I could speak on this. I've been married 18 years, going on 19 very fast. 3 children within this relationship, and we love all of them to death. My wife and I, you know, hasn't been the best of times all the time, has been the worst of times. You know, it's been some bad times. But we decided to work through and, you know, begin, you know, and basically learn how to fall in love with each other, you know, each and every day. We try. Some days is harder than others. We understand that. All relationships go through this. You know, I know a lot of you, and as you're watching the video, and I read a lot of the comments, and I tried to read as many of the comments as I can, and I know a lot of us are blaming the wife. Yes, there is some blame. However, you know, we have to take the understanding that when you look at a particular, let's take a particular scripture, a particular story that we're all familiar with. Okay. And the story that we're all familiar with is Adam and Eve, you know, and because we're quick to do this on Eve's part, we're familiar with Adam and Eve, how they were in the garden, and how one day while they were in the garden, a serpent came up to Eve and basically asked her to take a fruit from a particular tree of knowledge. And she said, you know, they had an interaction, and then the serpent said, "Did God say not to eat the fruit?" And she went ahead and was tricked and manipulated into having the fruit. In that same token, after she had the fruit, she then took fruit from the tree, presented it to her husband, Adam, and told Adam and gave the fruit to Adam, and Adam partake of that same fruit. When God confronted them and told them about their nakedness, you know, and then, you know, and God, you know, and then they went to hide from God and said, you know, God, we were naked. And then God asked them a simple question: who told you you were naked? We're all familiar with the story. But in all this, we look at the story in a way that it doesn't take away blame from everyone. Everyone involved has blame. And this is what I want to help you guys understand, that all 3 individuals within this situation has a part to play in it. Now, I'm not going to be too particularly harsh on the wife, and here's why. In these situations, a lot of times when you have a trickster, as Brian Carn, who has game. I'm not going to lie to you guys. The brother got game. The brother's very charming. And his game is so that he is very beguiling. And he's created an environment around himself, not only to protect himself and to protect his game, but he's created an environment around him where people who in other circumstances with other mental faculties would do things that they typically would not do. I believe this is to be the case with Mrs. Withlow. Sometimes people get caught up in pastors and preachers to the point where they believe that if they please their pastor and preacher, that they're actually doing God's work. And I know that when you hear that from me on this video, you're like, well, how can they? You know, they know that, you know that you're married. Why are you having sex with another man? You know that you're married. You know this. But at the same time, there's a feeling because of all of this bad doctrine that is out here, that this bad doctrine that teaches us that we are to not worship God first. Y'all get that twisted. That's what they say. But the actions are that you worship your pastor first. So that if you please the man of God, you then will please God. And some preachers, like we've heard this from Eddie's situation and from other preachers, that that pleasing the man of God ultimate can be pleasing the man of God sexually and becoming a vessel to be used by the man of God per se. I'm just using that as a term of what people use to call these preachers. Typically, I call them, dirty dogs, but neither here nor there. So I really don't want to rest a lot of blame. And I know a lot of y'all in the comments were blaming the wife. And yes, she should have resisted the devil and make him flee. But when you got that paradox on both sides of your brain talking about, I'm still married, but I got to please the man of God, and that stuff goes back and forth, I can understand why there's such internal wrestling that's going on in this situation. Trust me, she's not the first woman to be succumbed to a preacher because, in these situations. And trust me, she will not be the last. Okay? So if you're going to continue to blame her, I understand. But that's not where your focus should be when it comes to this situation. Now, Brian Carn, we understood from the door, and I'm telling you this, and I don't know that a lot of people may know, but I told you at the beginning of the track record that we have been following him for about 5 or so years. What is it, 2018? Since about for over 5 years now. We have been following this cat. We have others within the revolution that have gone through prophecies and misprophecies that he's had. I've talked about some false prophecies and stuff. Miss Justice, who's in the revolution back in 2016, going into 2015, began to track these prophecies that was done in 2015, that was said in 2015, and then began to track the prophecies that were supposed to happen in the year 2016 in December 2015. Which, when she started doing that, this is how God works. When she started doing that, a commenter on one of her videos reached out to her and said, you might want to check this prophet, Cheryl Lynn. This, not prophet, but this psychic, Cheryl Lynn. And gave her a link to one of her YouTube videos where she had prophesied the year of 2015 in March of 2014. So that by December 31st or January 1st at that New Year's service, I'm just giving you some history and then I'm gonna continue on. She gave prophecy, she gave her psychic things, and I think it was 9 out of the 10 of the 10 psychic prophecies that she gave, Brian repeated literally word for word to that church in Houston. And she was able to splice that up and put out this video, which really began to put the fire underneath Brian Carn and exposing Brian Carn in March of 2016. So we know that there's a long track record. By then, we had already heard from about 4 or 5 different women who had, who had bad relationships. We had already heard about how I believe it was his granddaughter, Jay Delano Ellis's granddaughter, was preyed on by Brian Carn. There were other women in Houston, Jacksonville, where he's from. I believe Ellis is in Ohio somewhere. But there were women across the country who had run-ins and been victims of Brian Carn's savagery. So we know the track record is there. It's plain. It's simple. But here's the problem. There is no way in my mind, and I could be wrong about this, and I'm going to say this right now. Brother Pierre, I don't think that you're that bad of a person. I don't really think that you're that bad of a person. I believe that you got caught up in some things that you may not have understanding on what you're getting caught up in. And I understand, in a lot of these church situations that being caught up in something because you're so wrapped up into, how church goes, that there may be some things that you may miss, may not miss, or may have seen, but you turned a blind eye to. And to me, you told on yourself. You told on yourself in this video. And this is what I mean by that. In your video, there's several things I want to talk about. I'll get to the hotel room. I probably won't deal with the hotel room. No, I'll say it real quick. All right, you have this meeting in the hotel room. And I'll just say this and then I'll move on. You had this meeting in the hotel room. You, your brother, Brian Carn, and some other bishop that I will leave nameless right now because I'm still trying to confirm if that was in fact that dude, that particular bishop. But we have a good idea of who that other bishop was. And if you know Brian Carn's contact and leaderships and different things like that, see, his leadership changes like crazy. And his fellowships with people change like crazy because they like him for his so-called gifts. And then when he gets into a situation, he then not only oversteps his gifts, but then he begins to manipulate folk in that gifts. And then the preacher's got to, deal with the carnage that is left after a Brian Carn revival or some sort, or after a certain number of revivals and things, because it gets kind of crazy with him. So that's a couple of things that happen. But how is it that you four in the hotel room and the man who's sleeping with your wife is there and, he walks out the room unscathed? That I don't understand. We can sit up there and I know that I've heard from other friends about, you always check the hoe and not the pimp. But in this situation, I don't necessarily believe so because they know each other. Y'all know each other. As a matter of fact, you worked for Brian Carn. See, this is where the problem comes in. You worked for him. See, in all this stuff that you left a lot of context clues that leads me to believe. And like I said, I don't think that you're a bad person. I think that you got caught up in this thing that you really didn't expect to get caught up in, because it was okay when, you know, when he was ripping off other women and he was ripping off other people in the congregation, because you were benefiting from the ripping off of stuff, you know, because that basically paid your salary. You know, his exploitation paid your salary. And, you know, now that because of this situation that has arisen, he fired you and, you know, kicked you out of his apartment. And now that you're homeless and jobless, now you want to come and start talking about the situation. See, I can understand why you feel the way that you feel. I honestly do. But I also see that you are complicit in this situation. What do you mean, Leonard? And I don't mean to talk to myself in the third person, but I am. See, you, in the video, you made mention of the psychic video about how he didn't pay the psychic off or whatever. You made mention, and I know it's kind of a flippant remark, but you made mention of it. You've also made mention of the envelope reading. You've also made mention that you were under his employ as a praise. You know, I'm not sure. I think that you were a praise and worship leader. I had to do some research to find that out on that. But you were working and living in their property. And then once you get out of it, see, my whole thing is, in this situation, you knew the man, Brian Carn. Yet, you allowed your wife to be placed in that situation. Unlike Adam, Adam didn't know serpents to talk. Adam didn't worry about the serpent. He was ignorant to the serpent being able to communicate with his wife. But you, on the other hand, you knew about the woman that was supposed to be in Reno. There's other women, but you knew the track record. But yet, when you sit up there and give signal and he gives signals about your wife's and her wife's hair and all this other stuff, and you mean to tell me that you still allowed your wife, regardless of something, without even telling her that, listen, I think Brian is trying to get you, or I'm thinking all this other stuff. But none of that happened, at least in the video. Maybe you could clear some of that up. Maybe you could make something up to clear something out of to justify these actions. Because as a husband, your first role is a role of protector. What do you mean by it? You should know this. We protect our women, our wife, we protect our children several different ways. Number one way of protection is providing food and shelter to our families. So we get up We go to work every day. We have a job. We provide for them. Some jobs are better than others. Some people work harder than others. Some people work longer than others. But as a husband, we feel that our first responsibility is to make sure that our home, that there's food, that the utilities need to maintain that particular home is taken care of. And some of us, we are good about doing that. But then there's some other protections that we need to do. There are emotional protections. You need to be able to, as a husband, make sure that your wife feels secure at home. Meaning that you're not sitting there abusing her, abusing the children, that you're not abusing substances, to the point where you become a different person. You also make sure that you are faithful to her in a way that you are not having a bunch of other women, that you are trying to protect in the same way. Okay? That's all a part of that. And also, this is where the church thing messes up a lot of families and messes up a lot of relationships. See, when it comes to church, what we find is that if there are men in the church, and sometimes a lot of churches don't have many men in the church, but when there are men in the church, a lot of these men will forsake their first duty, which is the family, which is their family, to take on the unnecessary duty of protecting the church and protecting the pastor. So what I see here are two people with this warped up, manipulated mindset that they both have to protect the preacher, the man of God. You want to say man of God. They're both trying to protect the preacher. And Pierre, that's where you messed up. Had you been focused and kept your eye on your wife, you would not be in this situation. But you allowed your affection for Brian Carn to be a distraction from you from protecting your wife. What do I mean by that? In the video, you are still protecting Brian Carn. How are you protecting Brian Carn? Why in all this stuff haven't you said his name in the video? Why did you leave him unnamed? You left him a way of escaping accountability. Yeah, context clues or something. And if you feel like lawsuits were happening, but you say that you have proof of this relationship, then what are you worried about lawsuits? You say that you say that there's death threats and everything like that. You're under undisclosed locations and everything like that. What are you afraid of? The man wronged you, but yet you're sitting up here trying, still protecting Brian Carn. This is the mindset that happens to a lot of folk in church, people, is that they want to, because of the doctrine that we teach, that, in order to get to God, and this is a bad doctrine, but it is what it is. How many times have we been told that, that we are to honor the man of God and give him double honor and all this other stuff? And we take these scriptures and take them way out of context. And then next thing you know, we're in situations that we're witnessing here on this video. within the context clues that you left, you knew of his track record. You also knew that he was a false prophet. You knew that not only was he a false prophet, you knew that he had the psychic video. You knew that he was an envelope reader. You knew about the other women, but yet you were still in that church with that knowledge. Don't come to me saying like all of a sudden you found all this stuff. Listen, Brian Carn's been going viral with his stuff for the past 5 years. Every controversy. You heard the controversy because he's addressed controversy in his clarion calls and stuff. He addressed all these controversies all the time. Yeah, he does it shadily, but he addressed stuff. You know that he sat up there. Put it like this. You know that a few years ago when he sat up there and dogged out Leandria Johnson because she was sitting up there smoking and you know, talking about smoking and whatnot, that he pulled her out of in his sermon and talked about her. That went viral. You knew last year when he sat up there and talked about Matthew Stevens and his tight pants and all this other stuff. That stuff is right there. You knew that he can call out names, but you felt that you couldn't call out his name when you know that he sat up there and had sex with your wife. And you sat up there and went into great detail about how he sat up there and raw dogged her and sat up there and pulled out and just left his semen all over your house, all over the apartment. That's what you saying. But yet you scared to say his name? This is what I mean by complicity, is that you know that you're wronged, but you are too scared to sit up there and say something or to say his name or to call him out on his wrong. And if you're not going to do that, then why go up on Facebook Live to sit up there to put out this video that you're sitting up there talking about these indirect things so that people could come and start liking your stuff and start following you? Because now you need to get a following, because now I guess you're going to try to start having your church. See, brother, unless you deal with this stuff, you're going to sit up there and be in the same situation, but on a different thing. See, now your wife will be on the outside looking at you like you crazy because you sitting up there with another woman. And you sat up here and manipulated her the same thing that the Brian Carn did to your wife. This stuff needs to stop, people. And I went for 40 minutes, and I didn't mean to go this long, but we needed to get some context in this video that I don't think a lot of us have really looked into it. We really need to get some more context into this situation that I think that a lot of folk don't look into it. So, yeah, Brian Carn, yes, dirty dog, liar, thief. Yeah, it's still, you know, still have wrong, you know, my diction is terrible. I know that. Yeah, thief. Yeah, that one. Also, false prophet. You know, we know that he's a false prophet. We also know that this man needs to be dealt with. All right. One last thing. Before I go, and if you stuck with me for this, we'll just go ahead on with this. One last thing. This is Sunday morning, but Saturday night, Brian Carn, I guess, was on a 30-day fast, and I guess he's off of his 30-day fast or something like that of social media, whatever that means. I don't know why folk do that, but I know why he does it. He does it to make it seem like he's more deep than what he is. Listen, the brother is just as evil and conniving as the rest of us. All right, he just lies about. He's just a good liar. But anyways, I'll say this: he had a clarion call last night. The clarion call is his gimmick that he has for his fans to watch him on Facebook Live or Periscope. you know, where he'll sit up there and basically hopscotch through a bunch of scriptures and stuff, and then typically somewhere in the midst of it, sell something of some sort. Last night he was selling a retreat. Typically he'll sell some sort of conference or some sort of revival or some sort of, he calls them prophetic encounters, but he's basically selling that stuff throughout most of it. And then, you know, he has a pattern to this, and you can, I'm telling you the pattern. And then he'll sit up there and maybe if there's something going on, whether or not there's a certain particular person or, you know, he has certain issues with somebody or something like that, he may deal with them directly or may talk about a situation. But last night he waited to the last 30 seconds, the last minute, and I'm only going to play the last 30 seconds of this clip of him addressing this. Okay. And it's indirect, very indirect, but Pierre, I mean, you know, you didn't name him in the video, so he really doesn't have to say anything about your comments. No accountability. However, I'll show this to juxtapose this. When Miss Justice came out with her video, and for a while he sat up there and dealt with, you know, it was right before this little 40-day little thing that he was having in this church, this little 40-day consecration prayer type of deal. And they were going to church for 72 hours of prayer or something like that. He has this thing. He has a whole bunch of gimmicks. Yeah, during that, he didn't do it. He didn't address it. But when he had the clarion call, and here's the thing, his other folk was sitting up here like, how are you sitting up here in 72 hours of prayer when we sit up here looking at this video? And we're talking about his other big dudes that haven't had him back, you know, because they want to know. So he had to come out and address it. Yeah, so he does address stuff when you name him. But since you didn't name him, he gave you 30 seconds. Basically, and it says hashtag God, or what is it? You can't kill what God won't let you kill, or something stupid like that. I'm going to play this after this video so that you can get context into that. All right, everyone. I know I went a little while. I got to edit this thing up together, and I'm going to give you the snippet afterwards so that y'all can get a full context of what was going on. Yes, this is Brother Leonard, the Truth Seeker. And yeah, I give, you know, and I know people think that a lot of what I do is gossip, and I understand why you do it. But a lot of what we deal with in this mess would make you believe that it's gossip. Nah. When will we sit up here and figure out that a lot of what this stuff is just mess? And that the light needs to come on so that you can see the mess, so that you can pick it up and clean it up. Too many times, y'all sitting up there with mess in your house, and you leave the room dark because you know there's mess, so that you won't see it. How many of y'all know people that will live in filth? But they never turn on the lights. They just stay in the dark rooms because they know that if they turn on the light, they're going to see that they need to run the vacuum. They're going to see that they need to pick up the garbage that's around them. They're going to see that they need to do some work to actually clean it up. That's what we do at the CFR. We flicking light switches.
Only thing I want to say this is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. For anybody that's listening, for anybody that's wondering, I just want to share with you 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. The Bible says something so profound. One of the most powerful scriptures I've ever read in my life. It says, prove all things. Hold fast to that which is good. Hashtag, you can never kill